Right, that's good.
Okay.
So what are we doing today, dear?
Well, you and I had talked about it and decided it would be okay to do 2 lessons today. Now, you know, the course says just do 1 lesson a day, but since we're just talking about them, we liked them both and we just really wanted to chat about them. Right?
These are the two.
Oh, okay. So it's lesson 249 and 250. If you've got this edition, it's on page 418. So we just kind of have a conversation about these lessons and what it means to us, because we assume that those people who are doing the lessons are going to do it as soon as they get up, and they'll do it as written, which means reading the what is section. In this case, it is what is
the world?
What is the world? Reading that whole thing through and then doing the lesson, sitting with it quietly for 15 minutes or so, letting it percolate down, letting your prayerful mind join with Jesus or the Holy Spirit, and that's the focus or the foundation of your practice. And what we're doing in this class is just kind of filling in with some thoughts and ideas about how it works for us and what it means to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just reading together, Forgiveness Ends All Suffering and Loss.
That's lesson 249.
Lesson 249. And it's just such a beautiful thing, because what it's telling us is that if we are forgiving, all suffering, all loss, all anger, attack, madness, all the craziness that we typically are seeing in the world disappears. It disappears from our mind, and we see people differently.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of forgiveness being, you know, the one state of mind that we can exist in. We can see how forgiveness relates to ending our suffering, right?
Yeah.
That we're applying, or the suffering of other people. But it's not always clear that forgiveness relates to loss. But when you talk,
Right.
when you look at what the Course is saying about the real loss we're experiencing is, according to the Course's theory, is the loss of our true self, right? And that it's the belief that we separated from our true self, we separated from love, and now we're in a state of lack. And we're trying to compensate for that state of lack by the people, the things in our lives, the situations.
And also by believing that the things, the people, the situations in our life have to be here for us to be complete.
Right.
And if they're not, then our very being is threatened.
Right. So if we're feeling a sense of inadequacy or lack, or seeing that inadequacy and lack in others, you know, there's generally some level at which we respond to it on this level. But the truth is that we need to correct this idea about who we are. And that's what forgiveness is doing. Forgiveness is saying, you have these two thought systems in your mind. And one is that I'm an ego body, and the other is as God created me. And we go between those two. But if we correct that error about who we are, then that forgiveness and correction applies to everything we're doing. So we're in the state of peace where there's contentment. I have no unmet needs.
Right.
And then in this here, it's when it says forgiveness paints a picture of the world where suffering is over, loss becomes impossible, and anger makes no sense. So that's what the Course is saying is the real cause of our sense of fear and inadequacy is the anger at which we're approaching our problems. And it's a continuing anger, that comes out, I'm still holding this mistaken belief about myself.
Right. We believe we can be hurt.
Right. So if forgiveness corrects that
Mhm.
idea about who I am, right? So
Mhm.
then I'm not going to see a world where loss and suffering is real because I've corrected it in my mind.
And you know this part about in the prayer, we have betrayed them, we've betrayed our minds, held them in a vice of bitterness, and frightened them with thoughts of violence and death. I had an experience of that this morning.
I'm going to let you talk about that because I can't find my water, and I will be right back.
Okay.
Okay?
I was on a hike this morning and thinking about somebody, how that's one of them. The second time this happened was even more dramatic. So I'll tell you that story. I was leaving the hike and the road is a windy road and is beautiful. It's just gorgeous. And it has a speed limit of 35 miles per hour, which is a moderate speed. I'm saying this for you Europeans because I can't translate it. So I'm driving along and a car comes up behind me, like right behind my car. And I'm going along like this, but in the rear view mirror, I'm watching and I'm uncomfortable. And after a while, I wasn't even going 35. I was going about 41, 42. After a while, I tapped on my brakes so that the brake lights went to give her a signal. And I had my window open and I went like this, like, get back. She got the idea. She went back for about 10 seconds. And then boom, she's right on my tail again. So then I got mad. And I slowed down. And I could feel that my inside tightening like a vice of bitterness, right? It's like, why did I have to do that? It doesn't matter. The lesson for me was when I'm angry and I'm believing that somebody should do things a certain way, I'm holding myself in a vice of bitterness.
And, you know, the key in this lesson is you're experiencing some fear of some loss.
Yeah, right. She's going to
of
hit
your
me.
concept of yourself.
She's going to hit my car.
You're going to be hurt. I'm going to be whatever, all of this. So that idea of loss and compensating for the loss,
right,
is continually what we're trying to accomplish. So the
yes.
Holy Spirit says, what you've really lost is the truth of who you are. You can recover that this moment in
right.
forgiveness.
Right.
So it's important to see that the guilt that we experience is making us feel like we're lacking love and we're trying to compensate for that lack.
Right.
Right. But the only thing that can compensate for that lack is the truth of who we are, which comes to us for forgiveness. So it's important to see forgiveness is tied not just to, you know, not
the little
just
things.
Well, not just to end our suffering, but it ends the sense that I'm inadequate, that I'm at a loss.
Who we are.
It ends the sense of scarcity,
right,
which is where your fear is. I'm going to lose myself.
Right.
And it's not always easy to see that.
And myself, the false self, includes my possessions, the rules that I ascribe to for the world, you know, all these things, like this is how it should be. And if it's not like this, okay, so then the unforgiveness that took place on the trail that gave me a lesson was I had some thoughts about other people's health and how I had given them my prescriptions for how they should take care of that situation, and they weren't doing it. And it's like, who's being held in a vice of bitterness? This one here. So, I mean, as soon as I recognized that, actually in both cases, as soon as I recognized what those thoughts were doing to me, I asked Holy Spirit to take them. Right. And change my mind.
Right.
Rather than continue to think the way I was thinking
Right.
and continuing to feel the way I was feeling.
See, that's the hard part in the course, is that we think the operative emotion is fear, and what we don't see is the anger behind that.
Sometimes there's anger behind.
Well, what he's saying here is that, when we have forgiveness, our world is not one that's made through anger and attack. Anger makes no sense. Attack is gone, and insanity is gone, because
Right.
it's insane to think that I attacked the whole of reality and changed it. That's insanity.
Yeah.
But to get in touch with the anger and the aggression
Right.
behind how you're solving the problems, that's what's producing the fear of loss, not anything else,
I know.
but your
yeah.
thoughts of anger and attack.
Right. And it's really hard when the whole world is believing in violence and how does it say it? Violence and death. I'm looking at the prayer here. It says, we have frightened ourselves with thoughts of violence and death. It's not the world that's doing it to us. This is something that it took me a long, long time to internalize this idea. And not just by thinking about it, but by using the practice and seeing how it works.
Right.
But the idea that my thoughts give me my experience. It's not the world that just exists outside of me that gives me my experience. Like the thought in the car was, she made me so mad. Well, she didn't make me do anything. My thoughts made me angry. My thoughts were anger.
Right.
And so just recognizing that the world we see outside of ourselves can't hurt us. We need to change our mind about the power of our mind.
See, that's the key, because if we just stop with, well, I'm making this up, or we look at others and we go, well, that's their problem. They're just making it up. If we just stop with that, we've actually taken a step backwards. What we've got to do is take the next step and say, there is a forgiveness here that will correct this one thought of anger and aggression and attack. I mean, take the example of you giving advice to somebody and they're not following your advice.
Yeah.
Well, what are you losing in there? What is the loss to you? Well,
I know everything and they don't recognize that.
That's right. So understanding that the loss of your true identity is really the loss that we're always dealing with.
Yeah.
Then we get to the state of peace where we can hear the Holy Spirit's forgiveness of that very situation.
Right.
I mean, that's the key with the Course, is that your upsets are always particular and very specific. There's something very concrete about that situation that you can identify. In that moment, you can see the thoughts that you're thinking and you can change those very thoughts. So there's no reason to ever have to leave that state of peace.
Yeah.
Right?
So the very first line in this lesson has a really big clue. Forgiveness paints a picture of a world where suffering is over. If you've done the workbook lessons, you know at the very beginning, mostly in the lessons 51 through 60, which is the review of the first 50 lessons, there's a really big emphasis on how our thoughts are making up the world. But then forgiveness still sees a world. It paints a picture of a world. So it's still illusion, there's still perception, but it's a world where there is no suffering and loss. And the Course tells us over and over that when we are in that miracle-minded state, the thoughts of miracles go out from our minds, even without our awareness,
Right.
and touch people we don't even know. We're healing the world by healing ourselves. So that lady who was on my tail doesn't know that the forgiveness that I finally achieved when I let go, by pulling off the road, by the way, was was a miracle for thousands and thousands of people. This is what the Course tells us, that we are here to heal the world, and we do it in these small ways in our daily life.
Yeah, and it's important to say that the Course is not having you deny that there's things like genocide in the world. It's not
Right.
having you deny all of those things.
Right.
But it's very clear that if I'm upset, it's because of my thoughts,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I can change my thoughts, and then I can deal with genocide or whatever problems are here, right?
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking as you mentioned that? Nelson Mandela and the years he was in prison, and he knew what his people were suffering, but he cleaned his heart to such an extent that when he came out, even when he was still in prison, the guards recognized him as some kind of saint. So he was a very powerful being.
Yeah. Well, it was the same thing with Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. They stood on this fact, like Gandhi stood on the fact. He said, we are not the slaves of England, right?
Yeah.
That's the truth. We stand on the truth. I can't be hurt by the world. I can't be hurt or suffer loss. And now I realize the only way I'm going to realize that is if I accept the forgiveness for my thoughts in that moment.
Right.
And I have peace then.
Then we have power too.
Well, then we can hear the Holy Spirit, because
Yeah.
we, like it says, you have this anger inside of you that's driving the boat. And when you recognize it's your anger that you're really responding to first, you can solve your anger.
And that's all we have to do.
And then we can hear the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Because if we're in a state of fear or anger and we want to stay there, we can't hear the peaceful guidance
Right.
that's going to come.
So forgiveness ends all suffering and loss, means my forgiveness, it ends my suffering and loss, but then because now I can hear the Holy Spirit, I have miracles to give.
Right. So this person that you're giving advice to about how they can be healthy, and you're upset because it's not being heard, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying there's some loss of my identity.
Identity, self-concept.
So in
Yeah.
those situations, for myself, if I'm in those situations, if I solve my identity problem
Right.
about who I think I am in that moment, or I think somebody else is, then I'm in this place of peace where I can hear the Holy Spirit.
So look at that and how it fits in with the next lesson. Let me not see myself as limited. That's pretty powerful. The Holy Spirit is telling us we are as unlimited as Jesus.
Right.
That takes a lot of acceptance for most of us.
Well, it does take a lot of acceptance, except that any given moment,
Yeah.
your upset is very specific and very concrete, and you can become aware of you causing yourself to think this way.
Yeah.
It's very concrete, it's not obscure, and at any given moment, you can do it. And
Right.
that's why we continue to do this, because we have done that.
Mhm.
We have changed our minds. The world may not have changed, but we changed our minds and we came ourselves to peace.
Mhm.
So what's interesting about this, let me not see myself as limited, it's saying, behold the Son of God.
Yeah.
So that Son of God in the Course is the one being of all creation. So he's saying, identify with that. But then the lesson is saying, identify with this one Son right here in your relationships.
Right.
If I don't see myself or anyone else as limited by these thoughts of anger and aggression and attack,
Mhm.
then I've healed not just my mind, but their mind. So
You've at least offered it healing to their mind. They may accept it later, or they may accept it right now.
But it's important to remember that if I put myself in the position of accepting this forgiveness, I'm doing that through the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is doing that in that situation. The Holy Spirit has accomplished that.
Yeah.
And my awareness is only that. I'm becoming aware of what happened, not making it happen.
Uh-huh.
The Holy Spirit has already forgiven us.
Mhm. Okay.
Right.
So when you talk about aware of what happened, do you mean that the Holy Spirit has forgiven us.
Well, we have this estimation of the situation. This situation is about somebody tailgating me.
Yeah,
This situation is about somebody not listening to me,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's very concrete and specific.
yeah, yeah,
But it's in that very relationship, if I heal that seemingly common situation relationships, I'm actually healing all of the whole of creation by that one act.
that's what he tells us.
Right.
And that first line of the other lesson, forgiveness paints a picture of a world where suffering is over. That's the world. That's
Right.
the world I see.
Right. So I mean, that's kind of tricky, because if I see genocide and I recognize it's my reaction to that situation that I have to first deal with,
Yes.
and I do get the peace with that situation, then I may be called to do something about genocide. Maybe I'll go to the UN and write a treatise on human rights, or whatever.
But you know, it starts with recognizing the Son of God.
Right.
So when we recognize the holiness, the wisdom, the power of every person, when we give them that dignity as the Son of God, that's where our attention will be. And that's how the miracle goes out to them to possibly do something about the situation for themselves.
So
We don't, we just give the Holy Spirit what doesn't work, and he gives us and the world what does work. We don't have to know in advance what the right answer is.
Right. So when the injunction, what to do in this situation, he's saying, he is your son, Father. All right, let me see this one Son of God. Let me relate to him. So, but then it says, let me behold his gentleness instead of my illusions of them. Well, what's the opposite of gentleness but anger, attack?
Or fear also.
Right.
So both of these lessons are saying to me, when I look out at the world and I'm agreeing with what I see on the news everywhere, that disasters are happening everywhere, on every level, terrible things are happening, and I get scared, I am believing that I am at the effect of the world, rather than I am here to help heal the world.
Right. So instead of seeing the world threatening you, you see it through gentleness.
And I see that my job is to bless the world, to bless it as it appears. It's like right here and now. Every human being, every animal is part of the sonship, is part of the Christ. And by recognizing that, even to a small degree, even just by saying, I've got some really terrible thoughts going on here, Holy Spirit, help me. Take these thoughts from me. Give me a forgiving picture of the world instead. That will happen. That does happen. And you may see it right in your own neighborhood, your own home, your own family. You see something different. You see love being given and received. And this is how we find our power. And it's not the power of the world, it's the power to save the world from its own illusions.
It's really key to see that when he says forgiveness paints a picture of the world, all right, these lessons are under this idea of what is the world, right?
Yeah.
That's the one. And it's saying basically the world you see is really just this idea of separating from love. And it's an idea of attack on love, right? And so you've made up a whole world to justify that attack and that hurt. So that's why it's saying, when you accept forgiveness, it's not just for you or for that moment. That forgiveness then is for every point in time and space going forward from that holy instant. So that's why he's saying, let us not in this, what is the world that's part of these lessons is, let us not rest content until the world has joined our changed perception. In other words, we're understanding that the Holy Spirit is always offering here no matter how we see it, no matter how we become aware of it, God did not wait, love did not wait to correct our errors. And we can apply this to what? To the whole world, to every situation.
Yeah.
And it says, let us not be satisfied until forgiveness has been made complete. In other words, forgiveness now is the only state of mind I need to relate to and to exist in, is this forgiven state of mind.
Yeah. And the forgiven state of mind is a joyous, happy.
Let me just finish what that was saying.
Okay.
There. So when I understand that, he then says, we must save the world. Why must we save the whole world? Because we who made it must behold it with the eyes of Christ, that what was made to die is restored to life. So when we're upset, it's this belief that I killed love and myself of love, and I can heal that idea right now, regardless of the specific application. So that's why it's saying the whole world and not just you.
Right.
It's the forgiveness is not just for you. It's
Right.
for everyone and every situation.
It's a state of mind. It's the miracle-minded state.
Right.
From which the action aspects come, but only under guidance.
You moved ahead. Right.
Okay.
So the language in this, in 250, the second one we're looking at today, is let me not see myself as limited.
Right.
Right. And based on what you're saying, is let me not see my mind as limited.
Right.
Right. My mind extends to everything, to every situation. I'm one with every situation. I'm one with every mind. That's why I can save the whole world.
And we're one with the mind of God. We're created by God as a thought in his mind.
Right. And that's why attack is impossible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's one mind. It takes two minds for attack. And that's why attack is not real.
So for people who are new to the course, and I don't remember if our Norwegian friend who's on here was the person who said that she was brand new, or if it was someone else. These ideas can be very challenging to a new course student. I think
they're challenging to us.
They're challenging
We've been doing it for 25 years.
But the practice of just giving Holy Spirit everything that we don't like, every feeling that's uncomfortable, every thought that produces that feeling, and say, I don't know what's going on here, Holy Spirit. You do. I know I'm safe in the mind of God. Help me to see this differently. And, practice is what shows us what really works.
Yeah. I tell you what, let's quit the recording here and open it up for